Hey architects, so a real common question I get about website copy. Now, I'm not a copywriter, but people ask me a lot about copywriting. Um, Maybe because I'm always talking about it. But the real common question I get is, okay, so we're serving multiple sectors or markets. We've got residential clients, we've got developers, we've got schools, all that kind of stuff. How do we make the website copy on our site work for all of those groups? And really, in most cases, you can't. You can write something that's very broad and general to all of them, but you're going to find that really difficult. And you're never going to have the opportunity to write copy that's really going to resonate with them specifically and show that you understand what they want to achieve and their problems and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to go through a quick exercise of how you would do this. Now, firstly, the way that you would structure it would be potentially that your homepage would be about your brand's USP overall. So it would be like, okay, so our firm, maybe our USP or our focus is that we're about improving the built environment generally. Or maybe it's about responding to local context, or maybe it's about preserving heritage, or maybe it's about sustainability, or maybe it's about pleasure and delight in these spaces, or maybe it's about, whatever. You're picking something for your firm that is like really, what your firm's all about. So once you've sort of figured out what that USP is, that one angle, usually an architecture firm will have like optionality of like 15 different USPs on their about page, but it's kind of about picking one and just kind of going with it. So you've got that. So let's say in this example, I'm going to go through an example here. Let's say it's, making a better built environment is really the focus of your architecture firm in general. So we might have a couple of different markets that we do that with. We might do that with homeowners. We might do that with developers. We might do that with schools, whatever. So let's say we want to write the copy for the developers. What we'll do is we'll have a service page. We'll have a service page for the developers. We'll have a service page, or you could call it even the developer page. Maybe there's a drop down sort of who you are. Maybe there's who we are and then there's who you are. And under who you are, we've got developers, educators, homeowners, okay? So then they can go to that page and they can read copy that's written specifically for them. So we've got our developer page. We've got a developer page. Now, what is the structure of this page? It's going to have a few elements. It's going to be firstly starting with what we know you want to achieve. Okay, so what is our ideal client's definition of success? Part one. Part two. What are the obstacles holding you back or making it hard? Okay, so that's about us showing that we understand your problems. Okay, so our ideal client's problems. Now, you can't describe all developers' problems and you can't describe what all developers want to achieve. If you take the so-called average developer, you will think of what they want to achieve as they just want to make money. But they will have to make money, just the same way all architects have to make money. It doesn't mean that that's what's driving their consumption choices, right? So necessarily, and you could take almost any other factor and there'll be a market big enough for you to find them and be like-minded with them. So we know what our ideal clients want to achieve. That's what matters here. And we know what obstacles they face in achieving that. So we talk maybe one or two sentences for each of those. Then we talk about how maybe 3 benefits, or you could say approximately three ways that we solve those problems and achieve those goals. That we help you to solve those problems and achieve those goals. So things that we like to kind of think about seeing here are, so we want these points to be related to USP. So in this case, our USP for our brand is making our city better. Might be our brand USP. So it should be related to the USP. It should have elements of IP tactics that are unique. So novel processes, approaches. In fact, I would even say rather than elements, it's probably reference to IP tactics that are unique to your firm. Maybe special things that you do. maybe a different kind of meeting that you have, maybe a different kind of feasibility process that you do, maybe a different kind of design service that you might offer, something that's custom to this market that you do for this market, right? So you have to think about how you're designing the product as well as designing your marketing. In this case, the product is your design services, but you need to also design them for this target market as well. Then we're going to talk about, explain the impact, really, what it does. It's sort of so that that kind of logic, so that it achieves this, so that this happens, so that that happens, just to make it obvious. Make it obvious. Okay, make it obvious and simple that the ways that you do things ultimately end up producing what kind of benefits. Make the benefits obvious. All benefits. Okay, so that's really good. So we've done that. Then we might have a couple of testimonials that support claims above. And then we might have project examples or an in-depth case study. All right, cool. So that's like a fairly legit structure for writing pretty persuasive copy for this market. Okay, so, or any market, really. There's obviously a million different ways you can skin this cat, but that's a fairly good structure. So let's have an example quickly. I'll try and be quick about it. Trying to write some copy. Copy on the spot. This should be fun. So we're an architecture firm that is focused on making our city better, and we're looking to work with developers. Now, let's think about this target market. Maybe these developers believe, so you can start that if they make their buildings more responsive, healthier, sustainable, connected to neighborhood and context, they believe that if they do those things, their projects will be popular, desirable, they'll attract investment to the area, activate the place, etc. And the final product of that is profitable, okay, or whatever. So let's say that's our belief system of our target market, because that's what we believe. Really, you could say it's your target market's belief, but you really want it to be, to be like-minded. You want to think, well, that's what we believe would happen too. So we're looking for developers that believe in this rationale. But what do they fear? Okay, they fear that maybe they're doing something new or different, tall poppy stuff, taking risk, not following the status quo. Maybe they're crazy. Maybe they're crazy. That kind of thing. They're dreaming big. Maybe they're taking on too much risk. Maybe they're doing something they're just not sure. They're ahead of the curve, feeling scared. Okay, so maybe there's all this stuff. They believe in this idea, but they're a little bit worried about these levels of risk. Now, there's probably architects watching this who are like, geez, this guy doesn't know developers. True. But in this example, this is just an example of an approach, an uninformed approach. If you come at this with an informed approach, you're going to have a much better time at this. So we're in a better position now to start writing our copy. We know who our target market is. We know what they believe, what they want to achieve. We know what they're afraid of. We know what they're afraid of happening, so we can address some of those fears. So what do we want to achieve? Now I like to start copywriting trying to think, let's go crazy. Let's imagine we're writing a political campaign speech. Let's imagine we're really swinging for the fences. We're not holding back, because why not? We can always look at it and go, this is too much. But, for this type of target client, I like to think a little bit like Apple's Think Different campaign a little bit here, or these are the crazy ones where they're like showing like, all those world leaders and stuff and saying, if these guys were around today, they'd be using Mac because they're crazy, right? They think different. So I'm kind of thinking a little bit about that audience. They're sort of altruistic, they're positive, they're superheroes, they want to change the world, they want to do some big things. So what do you want to achieve? Okay, so you're here because you want to make Melbourne a better city to live. Okay, so maybe we're starting just really big picture like that. You're here because you want to you believe in the power of architecture to provide healthier, better, more sustainable places for the community to live. And then empathize with that. We think that's pretty awesome because that's what we want to do too. Because here's the truth. Buildings like that pretty rare. There aren't enough of them. When one arrives, everyone notices. They inspire us to imagine what's possible. The type of lifestyle, the type of lifestyle or the way of living. We didn't know we could, have, or something like that. Okay, so real simple. I say real simple, but this would be really uncommon to read this kind of copy on an architect's website. But this is the kind of copy that I think is passionate, empathetic, and relatable to an audience who strongly, and I'm saying strongly, believes in the idea and concept that you believe in. And then we want to link it back to this last part. This last part. They inspire us to imagine what's possible, the way of living we didn't know we could have. Okay, so I'll just reread this part. You're here because you want to make Melbourne a better city to live. You believe in the power of architecture to provide healthier, better, more sustainable places for the community to live. We think that's pretty awesome because that's what we want to do too. Because here's the truth. Buildings like that are pretty rare. There aren't enough of them. When one arrives, everyone notices. They inspire us to imagine what's possible, a way of living we didn't know we could have. Maybe like a question. What's the end result if you can pull it off? Buildings. I don't know what's the right way to say this? Buildings that people will do anything to get their hands on. Okay, I'll just be really silly here. Homes, maybe. Homes. Yep. Homes that people will do anything to get their hands on. Okay, let's just do that. So now we can move into the obstacles. So these titles wouldn't be here on the final page, but you can, these are just placeholders for you, points of reference to think about the structure. What are the obstacles holding you back or making it hard? So we could sort of say, but doing something new, something different isn't easy. They'll tell you you're crazy. That it just can't work. It'd be so much easier to do it the way it's always been done. To take shortcuts, to cut corners, to hope nobody notices. Okay? I'm just picking that as a particular obstacle here. It could be any other kind of obstacle. Maybe, they're afraid of the cost. They're afraid of something else. They're afraid of making this investment or doing something new or doing something that people haven't seen before. So that type of copy. We would continue writing that, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into that too much. But you'd want to elaborate on that point and then provide comfort. So you'd have provide comfort here, which would be something along the lines of, luckily, we've done this plenty of times before. We know how to make it work, how to take calculated risks, to invest resources and time in the right places to make sure, whatever. That kind of stuff. Going into that, and then we can go into these 3 ways that we do it. So maybe in this case, you think about you've just highlighted that we have lessons from past experience. Really could just say, what are the 3 lessons? Really, you're thinking almost like a blog post structure with this. What are the 3 lessons or approaches that you take, or the things that you do that are really specific to addressing these problems and achieving these goals? Okay, if it's irrelevant to those things, don't talk about it. Just talk about stuff that responds to the main sort of psychological triggers of this target audience that you've identified. And we've got testimonials, and then testimonials that support and relate to claims above. Okay, so it's not going to be, imagine you've said all this. Like I just said, this list should be, really connected and relevant to these core ideas. It's the same for the testimonials. You don't then want testimonials like, Dave was a great guy, brought me a coffee every morning, absolutely love working with him. You want it to be like, Dave helped us to understand how the risks that we were taking with the design would ultimately end up benefiting the project. Okay, something like that, right? So you want it to be something like that. And then project examples that are just relevant to this category, and an in-depth case study. And that's going to be I reckon honestly a pretty persuasive bit of copy from a fairly, just in terms of a first go, because it's just aiming big. I think approaching it this way is relevant. It makes sense, and it's kind of inspirational in a really sort of, as much as you can with website copy. I think it inspires people, as so long as they are literally in your target market, and you do have a good understanding of your ideal customer and what they're going through. It doesn't have to be as lofty as this. I think if anyone's reading this and they're like, oh, that copy just doesn't make any sense, they're going to be like, it's just too lofty. I can't connect that with developers or whoever, educators, homeowners, whatever. But, that's about designing your customer persona right, and working out, what inspires them and what do they fear. It has to start from that. Then you have to really try to write, I think quite creatively with the copy to make it worthy of their attention. And to really show that you care, I think, is the main thing. If you're basically only in first or second gear with your copy, playing it extremely safe, holding back quite a lot as a small practice, who's really trying to get a message across to people, it's really not going to work. I would say approach it with a certain sense of boldness in how you're looking to do your copy. And look, hopefully this exercise was useful in terms of framing out how you might be able to try and approach this. So the major lesson is, don't try and write one overall piece of about copy that's going to apply to these different markets. If you're serious about working with different markets, then I think you need to create sub-pages on your website that are tailored and considered specifically for them. And then you write your copy through a framework of defining your USP, thinking about your customer persona in terms of goals and fear, or dreams and fear. Okay. And then you want to talk about, what do they want to achieve? What are their obstacles? What's making it difficult for them? And then 3 ways or strategies or techniques or tactics or services or whatever that help to solve those problems and achieve those goals, and get rid of those fears. Testimonials that support the claims above, and project examples or an in-depth case study. In this case, an in-depth case study would be a really thorough example of a project where you applied those strategies, where the client wanted to achieve this and had these problems. And if you don't have a story like that, then I would just stick to project examples. But you're trying as much as you can to create a really in-depth way of describing this and demonstrating this at work. So yeah, that's it. That's kind of my, that's currently what I'm working on in terms of thinking about structures for these kinds of pages. Will certainly change over time. I could come back in a few weeks or a month and have a completely different perspective on it. But this is something that I'm thinking a lot about at the moment. A lot of clients are asking me about this kind of stuff. So work in progress, developing it, reading a lot about this kind of stuff. And as soon as I have a different way of looking at it, I'll be sure to make you guys a video, chuck it up on LinkedIn and YouTube, and let you know. So thanks, guys. If you got any questions, anything that you want to find out about, or any points that you'd like to add to this document, let me know, and speak to you soon.